I guess like a Quidditch sort of rule. They already have. Do they have one? No. Also, I'm not a big roller coaster fan, I have to say, just because I get really bad motion sickness. But there's like, I think a 4D Spider-Man kind of roller coaster type thing, and I really enjoy that. So something like that, but Harry Potter themed. Yes, I did. When did I watch it? I watched it with the original cast. I'm very lucky. Oh my god, it was brilliant. It was really wonderful. I was more blown. I mean, because having worked on stage numerous times, I know that there are limitations, in comparison with film and TV, in terms of like special effects and stuff. But what they managed to do on stage was incredible, and I was really impressed by the magic and some of the tricks they did. But most of all for me, like I was just blown away by the performances of everyone on stage. It was like a masterclass in acting for me watching them, and I got to meet the cast after the show, and I was like really starstruck. So it was a great experience. Good theatre isn't just all about like production values and stuff. At the end of the day, it's having the craft and being able to move physically and be resonant in the voice and stuff. I don't really have a preference as long as it's a good script. If the writing is good and I'm working with a bunch of people that I can learn from, and that's more often than not the case when you do theatre, because there's very little money involved in terms of like pay, but then you come together as a kind of community and you try and do the best that you can with what you have, and I think and I always have an incredible time when I do theatre for that reason, because there's no ego involved, there's no hierarchy, it's just everyone's just trying to make a good piece of work and to try and even if it's just one member of the audience, try and change their minds, try and make them think about the topics that are discussed in the story. That's enough for me. And also just the feeling of being on stage and feeling how the audience are feeling. It's not something that can be replicated or experienced when you're doing something in front of a camera. Yeah. So I really enjoy that. Yeah. Some audience members are more vocal than others, but I think it's just like an energy, a feeling of energy that you get from the audience. When you can hear a pin drop, that's when you know it's going well. It's great. I mean, I think it's really wonderful how, I guess it's only now that I realise just how timeless the whole saga is, because the fans are across all ages. I think particularly this time, I find that the kids are younger than what I'm used to, and that's really wonderful to see that they're still getting into the stories, and it's just a classic. It's become a classic, and that's great, and especially with the kind of themes that are discussed in the stories. I think it's very relevant to what's happening now, and that we really need to kind of stick together. There's just so much horrible things happening around the world, and it's nice to be able to know that people can still not just escape into the world of Potter, but also relate it back to reality and what's happening now, and how that might influence them in a good way in their own lives, and so I think it's really important that the kids now are reading it and finding it really engaging, and for them they're not reading it because it's got an important message. They're reading it because they enjoy it, but subconsciously I think they're questioning what is right and what's wrong, and Absolutely. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I like fully support everything that they're doing at the moment. I think like right now, because our planet is on fire, anything that, you know, promotes kind of trying to take care of our planet and the environment. I'm a vegetarian trying to become vegan. You know, I commend Ivana because she's great, and when I told her I was trying to become vegan, which I managed for a couple of weeks, and then she like bought me a lot of books, and I read a couple of them, and they were really helpful. So I think with veganism for me, like it's about just kind of reminding yourself and like watching kind of documentaries that are available like on Netflix, and you know, films like Okja and Earthlings, which I've still to watch. I think all that kind of stuff is really, and that's again, that's kind of a big part of trying to protect the planet as well by eating less meat. So yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying. I think I became an advocate for the LGBT community because my cousin, who I live with, she's very dear to me, and she's gay, and she doesn't really conform to a gender, well, female or male, and I think, you know, it's just really important for that kind of representation and to have that equality, because especially right now with what's going on in the world, and people feeling kind of like they can't be themselves, so there's that, but also just equal representation for ethnic minorities, me being one of them in Britain. I think we're still at a stage within the industry where there's not enough roles for people who aren't white and cisgendered. I'm all for women's equality as well. I'm a feminazi. That's they call them.
That's not a bad thing.
No, absolutely not. I know what I've been in the industry for enough years to know that there's still a lot of work to be done. And you know, I'm a massive supporter of Time's Up, the Me Too movement, all of those things, and they're all interconnected. They're not kind of separate from one another. So I'm very grateful. My latest project for BBC One, called The Nest, is set in Scotland, and I get to play a Scottish genderqueer journalist. So I'm really happy about that, but at the same time, the bar is so low for me. I'm just, you know, I shouldn't have to really fight for that, because that is such a big part of my identity, just being Scottish, and to be deprived of that is another example of what's wrong with the industry. And I don't understand, like, you know, I've played so many parts where I think because the combination of being Scottish and Chinese is quite a rarity, and so then people can't imagine a Chinese girl being Scottish, and therefore it's like, oh, well, you have to change your accent so that, you know, people can understand you. And I'm like, well, I'm speaking English, you know, Scottish is not a different language. And I think the more that we're able to kind of show that on screen and for people to see that, the less people will come up to me and go, oh my god, you speak in a Scottish accent. Like, wow. Like, well, not wow, because, you know, there's a massive Chinese community in Scotland, and yeah, it's just having to deal with all of that kind of extra stuff that I find quite frustrating sometimes. But no, like I said, I'm very grateful that we are kind of moving in the right direction. I thought, did I answer your question?
Yeah.